Good morning and welcome to the Daily Stack. We have Mitchell SU from Blockware. We're excited to have you on. Halston, good morning. Always a pleasure to have you.
Morning, guys.
How was BitBlock Boom? How was last week?
It was awesome. I always say I love going to Bitcoin events in the middle of a bear market because the truly convicted ones show up. Signal was high. It was great. Got to meet a lot of people who actually watched the Daily Stack. So that was nice meeting everyone. It was good. We had some good barbecue. I turned 24 in the middle of the conference, so that was fun.
Well, happy birthday, belated. And I said, I think in the comments, but not live.
Yeah, appreciate it. It was awesome.
Mitch, are you there? Are you on site?
No, that's the only major Bitcoin conference I haven't been to. I've always wanted to go to BitBlock Bloom. Heard great things about it, but just hasn't been in the cards for me yet. But hopefully one of these years.
Yeah, I think the people that go there, it seems like you don't have a lot of fluff. You have like people very interested in mining. You have people that are like work in the industry, committing their lives to obviously, working either like mining. I think historically because like oil and gas. And I met the founders of the BitBlock Boom a while back, and their ethos around it. They saw so much fluff, and this was back in I think 2023 when I met them. They saw so much with just these very more crypto forward conferences that they wanted to keep it so much, hey, hardline, we're focused on Bitcoin. We're going to be mining through, the bear market. We're going to keep investing in capital into this. Halston, question for you. We see thematically a lot of these Bitcoin miners transition into doing AI HPC. How much of that was part of the discussion there? You have the Irons, the Nebius, you have Clean Spark, CoreWeave, or really Core Scientific is the Bitcoin arm of that. But what was anything around the HPC?
I didn't really hear much conversation about that. But also the setup was interesting. It was in this room and there was like a main stage and they had these have you guys ever seen those silent disco headphones?
Yeah.
Well, that was the setup. So if you wanted to tune into the panels, you had to wear the headphones. And I was kind of, I was working the Bitcoin Well booth, so I didn't really get to tune into too many panels. But from my understanding, I didn't really hear too much about AI. There wasn't a single panel about treasuries. It was very mining focused, Bitcoin only. And I think BitBlock Boom actually is the longest running Bitcoin conference. And they were the only conference that they still put it on during COVID in 2020. So
Gary Leland, the guy that runs it, is a savage. There was this clip of him 4 or 5 years ago. Some TikToker came up to him on the street and the caption is one of those clickbaity crypto multimillionaire gives his advice. And he's like, just stay humble and stack sats, quit the Diet Cokes, quit all the frivolous spending. Don't ignore shit coins. Just buy Bitcoin a little bit every day and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Love to see it. I mean, clear vision, someone committed to running an event through the ups and downs. It's stressful, right? Those people putting in 100,000 million commit to venues and all the vendors and everything. What was your take now? I think what we're looking at right now in the markets and talking about is, and the title up, Mstr rotation underway. We have people looking at it this week with Bitcoin, the markets, 74K right now, dipped a little bit below 74 and high 73,000. It did break 75K last week, I believe, and then now, or earlier on Sunday, but then now we're back, or I think Saturday, when we thought there was going to be a ceasefire, there's going to be negotiations with Iran. So we see somewhat of a bull flagging. We're not chartists here. We don't know what we're doing necessarily on the charts, but we do know what a bull flag looks like. And Bitcoin's doing that. We discuss with people, we talk to investors, and they are looking at is Mstr, some of these treasury companies that are quality, that do have Bitcoin, that are doing a lot of, financialization, using a lot of leverage. Are people getting back into it? Did you get a sense people are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, I mean, I think at BitBlock Boom, for sure, I think everyone that I talk to is confident that by December at the latest, we'll be back into six figures. And I think the sentiment was just stack as much as you can right now, because we're going to look back next year on this time and think, wow, like Bitcoin was at such a discount at 5 figures. And so, yeah, I think so. MSTR, super, super divisive topic at BitBlockBoom. Do not recommend bringing it up.
That's why we bring it up here, is that you say you can give us the tea on
there's I think a lot of us just kind of have to agree to disagree. I think a lot of the people at BitBlockBoom are a little bit older in age and a lot of OGs, and so they've seen a lot of the collapse. They've seen the FTX collapse, and they kind of see MSTR strategy, all the preferreds as a big Ponzi. And so, yeah.
I can imagine that was probably the vibe there. I'm actually willing to come on here with somewhat of a hot take. I guess it wouldn't be hot at BitBlockBoom, but
that's why you're here.
I understand the preferreds. I've been following them since day one, generally a fan, but I think stretch is overrated, especially within the Bitcoin world. And, we're talking about a rotation, right? It seems like everyone's rotating into stretch right now because it's done, record amounts of trading volume in each of the past consecutive days. I believe over $1 billion per day the last 2 days.
Yeah.
And stretch is fine, right? It's basically a T-bill, right? It's a glorified T-bill with a slightly higher yield. But people are rotating in at the wrong time, right? The time to buy stretch would have been 6 months ago when Bitcoin was 120K de-risk. But right now, it looks like Bitcoin's obviously at a 40% discount. We're starting to kind of break out of this range. I think there's an immense amount of upside ahead of Bitcoin over the next 2 years. And it seems like retail is FOMOing into stretch at the exact wrong time to be doing that.
I agree. I think stretch is really incredible during a bear market, but I think we all can kind of agree that Bitcoin is incredibly cheap right now and it's about to go parabolic. At least I think that. I know, Mitch, we kind of interacted the other day. I think Strike is severely underrated. I don't know what it's trading at right now, but when I posted this the other day, it was around 71, 72. And it's fixed 8% div with an effective yield of 11%. So, I think people are missing the opportunity here with Strike. Are you pulling it up, Jody? Yeah.
I totally agree, right? Because Strike is different because it's a fixed dollar per share. So it's $8 per share, which, that becomes close to 11% at the current rate. But you also have all of the upside on Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? Because you get fixed income and, you can do with that what you will, fund your lifestyle, pay margin, whatever. You have optionality with that and consistency, but you also have Bitcoin upside versus stretch. It's a variable rate. So you're not getting a fixed dollar per share. And there's a very high probability that the current stretch yield is the upper bound of what it will ever be historically. So right now it's about 11.5%. I would say that's risk-free because strategy is so over collateralized to pay those dividends. The market obviously disagrees, right? Which is why the yield is so high. But Bitcoin is 75K right now. As Bitcoin goes back to its all-time high, that yield is almost certainly going to come down, right? Because they become even more over-collateralized. It's safer in the mind of the target audience. The yield will have to come down. Plus, the Federal Reserve is going to cut, which gives strategy itself legally the ability to cut. So that's baked into the stretch legal documents, as they can cut basically respective to the Fed funds rate. So I think the current rate, which is not fixed, right? It can adjust every month, I think is going to be on the higher end versus you could actually kind of really lock in that rate with something like Strike where they can't change the yield. It's just a fixed dollar amount per share and you get that upside. So I'm a big fan of Strike right now.
Yeah. Well said.
We'll pull up the trading view. We'll see what we got going on. So with Strike itself, I think exactly like you guys are saying, not financial advice, but it's worth it to consider giving up the extra, 3% that you're getting with Stretch because it's fixed. It's going to be pegged at $1 or $100 actually, and that's, you're not going to get the upside from it. Strike obviously has had its day. While Bitcoin is running up last year, broke 100K, And then it took a while for people to understand these products. Like, this is why we're talking about them, is, Saylor was on a Bankless, which is the big, Ethereum podcast. They have a huge following. They were early to Ethereum. And they were asking him around, at what level do you get liquidated? And, Saylor sighing. And that's not the way to look at it. I think they're so over collateralized. Not every Bitcoiner needs to be in these products. I think that needs to be said. But if you are someone that, is getting hyped up on Stretch, there's like 2 to 3 Stretch trackers announced every day that we see on the timeline on X. So we poke fun at that when we probably have Stretch somewhere in our ticker symbols as well. So we're part of the problem, but Strike, it needs to be the Strike tracker. Halston you mentioned it was 71 to now 75, and people that want that dividend, that's going to be super attractive. And I think this is going to it should be a way for people to raise capital. I think call options and like how that works isn't as simple as Stretch. So it is going to take a little while for I think the regular retail public to understand how it's tied to the common stock, to understand that all the volatility and upside of Strategy, the company itself, does funnel down to MSTR. So I think the whole dynamics in play is a little bit harder to understand than like a money market fund that pays 11%. Like, that's an easy sell.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting when you look at this chart. I don't know what the exact percent is, but from peak to trough, it looks to be about a 30% drop, versus Bitcoin went down 50%, Strategy went down 75%. Yeah. So you can see kind of in real time how the risk is transferred through the different products. So you're getting Bitcoin exposure, but on a 50% Bitcoin drop, you only got a 30% drop in Strike. And even since its IPO, it's actually up, even though during the same time period, Bitcoin was about $90,000 when Strike IPO'd. So Strike's been flat while Bitcoin's down. I don't know what that is, 20, 30%. Plus you got around 10% dividend. So yeah, Strike is very interesting, incredibly underrated. And I actually think there's a reason MicroStrategy promotes Stretch the most, because it gives them the most favorable borrowing terms, right? And they're kind of taking the opposite side of the bet, right? They're selling Stretch to the market and they're promoting it so people buy it and they can finance their Bitcoin purchases. I think there's a reason they promote Stretch over some of the other preferreds.
Yeah, I know those of us that went to Strategy World, we all said it was Stretch World, just Stretch banners and merch everywhere. So,
but as a common stock holder, I love it, right? Please issue more Stretch, allow us to borrow funds and buy more Bitcoin. And I think the common stock is, right now it's at a 1.1 MNAV, very historically low. I think it's incredibly undervalued right now.
Yeah. The MSTR holders they're the real winners here. I want to talk about kind of the influx of ETF capital. You've argued that the influx of ETF capital has permanently reduced Bitcoin's historical volatility, leaving us with a slower and sometimes grueling upward oscillation, if you will. Can you just expand on how this like new market structure kind of alters a timeline to one coin out of million?
Yeah, so it's objectively true. The realized volatility of Bitcoin is, for the entire ETF era, which is about 27, 28 months now, has been lower than what it was for all of Bitcoin's history prior to that. And this is a double-edged sword, right? Because some people want that volatility. It seems also the volatility has been transferred to Strategy common stock and other Bitcoin treasuries. So like there is the ability to go seek out that volatility, but on the actual underlying asset, it's much lower. And from a logical standpoint, this makes sense. The type of investor who wants an ETF to get their exposure to Bitcoin, lower risk tolerance, but also they're slightly more prudent. So they tend to not be selling into dips as much as maybe the retail on-chain degenerate would, but also they take profits much sooner as well. So we've seen this kind of situation play out since the ETFs were launched, where Bitcoin will go up, 40 to 50%, and you see a sell-off on chain from some of these holdings, right? Typically before the ETFs, Bitcoiners, you wouldn't see them start to sell their coins until they were, 10x in the money. And you can see this on chain, right? You can measure the Bitcoin price based on the time a coin was moved versus the time it's moved now. So you can directly measure cost basis like that. The ETF buyers, they're much more reflexive to the upside. So this kind of caps Bitcoin's explosiveness, so to speak. So I don't think we're going to get any of those, 10x moves in a 12-month time frame like we did from March 2020 to March 2021. But at the same time, Bitcoin only went down 50% from its all-time high. And if the trend continues, the next bear market might be a 40% drop or a 30% drop. So I think the volatility is just going to continue to compress. But it creates an interesting dynamic because I think it's a positive feedback loop, right? One of the most common things holding investors back is Bitcoin's volatility. Well, if Bitcoin's becoming less volatile, it's going to attract more capital, which kind of reinforces that dynamic.
Yeah. We'll be seeing a lot more of the kind of steady upward staircase.
Yeah. We had Adrian Morris on last Friday, and he's like, I think a couple months ago, he was talking about like the golden stairway to heaven, but it's realistically, it's not 1 million next year. It's, 125 maybe by December, and, optimistic view from like BitBlock Boom, but 150 next year, 175 in 2028. Like it's not going to move at that level. I think that's why realistically, like we talk about on this show, a lot of Bitcoiners, a lot of people that early on to the game or new to the game, they're not satisfied if they only have a half a Bitcoin, and they're not going to retire on that. And I think coming to that realization and not listen to the Moon Boy talk of Bitcoin going to 1 million next year, some of that is like OGs and people selling them the vision and a dream that it's great for them if they have 100 Bitcoin because they bought a lot in 2015, but that's not the reality for everyone. So I think that's why the new generation like looks at, okay, what else can I do? How do I improve this? Or how do I improve my own standpoint, and how do I have upward mobility? So I think that coming to terms with that, and it's good to talk, even talk trash about certain treasury companies to keep them accountable for it. But we also need to look at, okay, you need to store as, look at Bitcoin as your store value, not fiat, not traditional stocks. SaaS is getting beat up, gold has its limitations. Obviously gold's done well this year, but there needs to be more conversation of like, how do you like actually work and produce income and improve your lives and build your career. And I think enough of that is in Bitcoin. Too many people have talked about, just buy gold and you're going to be rich. And that's not real. That's not realistic. No. Anyone can buy Bitcoin, which is great about it. It's decentralized, but that's not your ticket to retiring next year and going to El Salvador.
Right. No. I think Mark Moss says this really well, like all the time. I follow him on Instagram. It's really funny because I feel like he's such a like hardcore Bitcoiner on X, but then on Instagram, he's definitely more of like a financial freedom kind of guy. And he always says like, if someone gives you 50 grand and you're like, I don't know what to do, he's not going to tell you to put all of it into Bitcoin. He'll probably tell you to put maybe 10K into Bitcoin, but he's going to tell you to take that and learn a skill and develop a really strong work ethic. And that's truly how you survive and kind of make it out of this AI era that we're in and learn these skills. Like, I think that's something that's not talked about enough in the Bitcoin space, is just like learning how to be like a really great worker and learning these skills. And I hate the messaging of like 0.1 Bitcoin is going to be enough to retire. Like, I just don't think that's going to be true. And like, yeah, maybe 0.1 in 10 years will be a lot more than it is now, but I still think like we should just be stacking as much as possible.
Yeah, those clickbait videos are the worst. Thankfully, at Bitcoin Vegas, I'm on a panel where it's how much Bitcoin do you need to retire. So I'm going to be vocal. Yeah, nice. Make sure the audience knows it's not 0.x, right? It's probably, obviously there's a bunch of different variables when you need to retire, how, what your expenses are going to be. But at present day, I mean, it's more than 10 Bitcoin, right? It's certainly not 0.0053, whatever, right. The insert YouTube clickbait title here is.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll all be in Vegas, so we'll have to check out your panel. Do you know what day it's on?
It is the first day, I believe, around 3:30, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to come with hot takes. You have to come in and say, look, I'm 25. I can't buy a house with like 0.5 Bitcoin. Like,
I think I might get booed off stage as the bear, though. I think I might have to bring, like, how Lee Corso on College Game Day brings out the mask from under the table? I might have to wear the bear suit because I'm going to be the guy that's saying, no, you actually, that's not enough, right? I know people love to take they take 8 billion people, the population of the world, divided by 21 million. You're like, oh, you only need 0.002 Bitcoin because of all the population pyramids and stuff. I'm like, dude, that's just not how it works, right? Do you think if you think about the real purchasing power of all of the assets in the world, Bitcoin represents what, $1 trillion? Its market cap, 1.5 trillion, but there's $1 quadrillion worth of stuff. So let's say Bitcoin gets 20% of that, which would be like incredible, right? So that's $20 trillion market cap. Oh, no, it'd be a $200 trillion market cap. Do 200 trillion divided by 21 million. All right. That's about $1 million a coin, right? In real terms, real purchasing power. So if you have 0.1 Bitcoin, is napkin math, but I think it's generally accurate, that'd be worth 100 grand in purchasing power, which would be life-changing if you're like a third world peasant. But if you live in America, that's certainly not enough to retire.
Yeah. Can't even buy a house.
Agree. Yeah.
I mean, maybe down payment on a house, but
yeah,
it's not the riches that you expect.
You could buy one of those tiny homes that are like a shipping container.
Yeah. I think the piece of that like, I think taking the next level is just people need to look at it like proof of work, right? Like you have to be productive continually. I think the idea that just buying Bitcoin and holding it and getting rich is like financialization more than it is proof of work. And let me pull this up because Nikita Beer, I think sorry, I pronounced his last name. He had a quote or a tweet the other day. Crypto has a rough year. Maybe we should launch something to fix it. They I think launched cash tags, which is just like the hashtags that with the dollar symbol, and so they can like sell through X. Not the cool thing that we hoped for, which was more like Zaps and Lightning payments, etc. But one of the things I dropped in the channel or dropped in the thing was Elon Musk quote, which is something he tweeted in response to something else. I don't know the original tweet, but he said, "True, that is why Bitcoin is based on energy. You can issue a fake fiat currency, and every government in history has done so, but it's impossible to fake energy." And that is the lens I think that most people should start to look at this as, AI, HPC, those take a ton of energy, and it's going to drive up the cost of everything else. And that's what we're worried about. We talk about on the AI side is, personal computers, anything that uses an NVIDIA chip, an Xbox, the next PlayStation, anything that needs these like graphics cards, is competing across the entire supply chain for these like very, very hungry, well-capitalized, $800 billion Anthropic companies, $800 billion OpenAI companies that, their potential IPOs later this year. And so thinking of just Bitcoin as like an energy input and keeping it towards that, we need to think about, and the average person in their career needs to think about, how can I keep up with this? How can I produce something that's more valuable than the inputs that I put in, than the energy that I put in? And a lot of that's between your ears is like the creativity you have as a human versus, you guys probably use ChatGPT or Claude. It's reverting to the mean. It's reverting to like what the average is across this data set. People need to think of, okay, what can I as a human do that's creative, that's above average thinking?
Right. I think that's well said. And we were talking off camera before we started about EMFs and Bluetooth headphones and protecting your brain, which is all fun and games, but there's actually some truth to that, right? Because I think AI is, from a career standpoint, it's leveling the playing field on technical skills. So everybody will be a coder, a graphic designer, good at business, whatever. It's about what goes on up here that's going to actually make the difference. So being able to communicate, being able to unlock the creative part of your brain, which AI, so far from what I've seen, not necessarily creative as much it is like technical knowledge. So that's going to be the differentiator in from a career standpoint, is who can actually think for themselves and use that to multiply the output of the intelligence, because the technical skills are all going to be the same across everyone. So if you can communicate and you can have the right ideas to put into the AI, I think you'll do well.
Completely agree. I saw a tweet that was like, and I just lost you guys for a second. I don't know if you guys got lost as well. So I don't know if you already said this, but I saw a tweet that was like, AI is going to make dumb people dumber and smart people smarter. And I feel like I agree with that. You got to be able to use the AI to your advantage and learn from it and learn with it, rather than just like depend on it for all of your like critical thinking, if you will.
Yeah. Like Tyler Durden said, the things you own end up owning you. So Is the AI going to own you, or are you going to own it?
Yeah. So one question I have, we're trying to make, I think for our audience, we want to help out in this whole transition. That's what scares me is I don't want a lost decade transition of people that were CS majors or, computer science degrees and engineers that, suddenly I'm like, don't have good job prospects. And, so they kind of scrap around for a while. We want the transition to be faster of like reskilling into like, what is, the best careers to be in, what's the most productive for society. For you guys, we're obviously on a live stream right now. We're very bullish on live content. It's very authentic. We're not scripted. We didn't even really plan questions here. How have you guys at a young age started building a brand? Like that's not something I was doing at 24. Like I was working, but I was absolutely not like tweeting or Twitter was like early on, but I wasn't actively doing that. How much of you guys like building a brand, getting out there, making content, doing things that now is more valuable that now you see all the slop?
Yeah, you take that one first, Halston, because you've done a great job of that over the last year. I'd be interested to hear kind of your inner workings of your brain here.
Yeah, appreciate it. I started posting exactly 9 months ago, and like it just started with a raw, authentic story. And when I started, there was really no goal to actually build a personal brand. It was kind of just to connect with other Bitcoiners, as I was like 2 weeks into my job at Bitcoin Well and wanted to just meet other people in the space. And what I realized is that very quickly is that if you have a personal brand, you will just, so many doors will be open and you'll be able to benefit from so many different opportunities. Every opportunity I've ever gotten from anywhere from just attending a conference or speaking at a conference or a sponsorship, like it's all come from Twitter. And people always ask me like, how do I grow a personal brand? And I always say the same thing. Like it's a cliche, but you just got to be yourself online. You got to be as raw and humane as possible, because with the rise of AI slop, that is what's going to become the most valuable. AI can never replace Halston, Mitch, Jody. AI could never do that. And so I think that's going to become just increasingly more valuable and in demand, because I think we're already seeing just so much slop and people are already just so fatigued by it that it makes you and your unique brain that much more valuable. And so I just woke up one day, decided to tweet. It did really well. And then I just committed to tweeting 5 times a week, Monday through Friday, once a day. It was like first thing I did in the morning after my morning routine. And like, I'm still learning, but I think I always tweet with just like, I'm just kind of wanting to pour out my thoughts. I'm not really like tweeting in hopes that it goes viral. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, that's been my experience. And I think there's so much opportunity that comes from doing that.
Yeah, those were wise words. It's a little cliche, but like authenticity definitely wins above all else. I found myself now trying to take more pictures as I do interesting stuff. I did a terrible job at that because I've been working in Bitcoin for like 5 years, but it's when you actually like take pictures of real things that you're building in the real world that connect with people. So yeah, trying to be better about that as I go to conferences and stuff like that. But it's always the tweets that I find myself putting the least amount of effort into actually are the ones that end up going viral. It's a weird platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that like I think chatting with someone recently, and I think YouTube is like the best. It seems like for me, the best like microcosm of what AI in the workforce could look like in the future is that YouTube has 2 billion users. I think monthly active users, and so the scale of the platform is just way bigger than most people even think of, and most any software platform like of all time. And anyone can upload a video. There's like thousands and thousands of hours of video uploaded every second. And part of that is anyone can do it. And so it's just hyper competitive. Like you see on YouTube, like the algo is like, it's better than X, it's better than like Facebook, I believe. It is very strong. And if you're not very good, if people don't want to watch your full video because you're not giving them what you promised on the title, if you just promise Bitcoin to 1 million and then you go on and don't really have a good reason why, then people aren't going to like watch the whole thing and they're not going to click. And then they're not, the YouTube algo is not going to serve anything. And I believe that level of competency in the algorithms themselves is going to apply to a lot of industries in a sense of like what's slop, what's original and creative, versus like who did just put this into AI and expected AI to do the work for them. And that's going to be like the level of like, okay, it's everyone has access to education and resources, but you're really going to have to either like focus hard on a niche, or if you're more broad, you're going to have to get really good and creative on the packaging and like how you deliver the format, some way to stand out.
Yeah. I mean, I think niche, targeting a specific niche is, if I were 18 or giving advice to someone that's 18, they don't have any connections, they don't know what to do, that you can go study computer science, but good luck getting a job. I would say just find a niche and zone in on it. Like, obviously for us, that is Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be Bitcoin. For me, that's just what's most exciting and interesting. But become extremely well versed in a niche, make videos, even if no one watches them, because it's proof of work, and it'll allow you to, it'll give you a reason to connect with other people in the industry. But yeah, I would say really hyper focus on one specific area of interest.
Yeah, completely agree. And even I've talked to people in the Bitcoin space before that, will ask me how they can grow a personal brand within Bitcoin. And I feel like even if you're just posting about Bitcoin, like I think you kind of have to post like within a niche. Say if you're someone that works in the financial services side of Bitcoin, then like post about that. Like Mitch, I know you post about mining and like what you do at Blockware. And I think those stories are really intriguing and interesting to people. And so I would say, like, if you're trying to grow a brand even within Bitcoin, like find your little side of the space and get really good at posting about that. And then, after that, I think there's opportunity to expand out. But yeah, I want to talk about your book, The Conservative Case for Bitcoin. You link the fiat monetary system as kind of to a decline in traditional American values. And I think you've posted, you got married pretty young. And so I would love to hear about that and just kind of how you see Bitcoin as a way to fix the broken incentive structures in the U.S. economy and fix our values as Americans.
Yeah, great question. I'm glad you've read my book, it sounds like, or at the very least you got the main idea, because that was really the point I wanted to drive home in the book. Is there's a nuclear family, right? And this is kind of the backbone of American society for a long time. You've got a man providing for his family, he's got a wife, and they have children. And by every measurable statistic, this is deteriorating away. And I don't think the problems we see are a coincidence, right? So if you look at divorce rates, people are getting divorced more often. People are getting married later in life. People are having fewer children. None of this is good. And I would argue fiat money is the driving force behind that, because it's really difficult to go and start a family if you don't feel financially secure to provide for them, or even for yourself. And it's sad because anecdotally, I'm 25. I know I can probably count on one hand the amount of people I know that are actually like my age plus or minus 5 years and are married or don't have like 3 roommates. And it's not to like knock these people, but it just goes to show that the average doesn't cut it anymore. And by definition, most people are going to be average or below. And so if you have a decaying currency that devalues people's time and energy, and they're not able to provide, housing, food, gas, all of that for themselves, let alone a family, like you're going to see this decay in people actually starting families, and that's going to decay society. Because I kind of think of families as like almost like a mini government, right? It's like I'm the king of my household, not in like a tyrannical or oppressive way, but what would a good king do? They would provide for the members of their community. They would also defend against outside threats and attackers, and they would organize the resources. They would also be kind of the rock from an emotional standpoint, right? The people within the community would go and take their problems to the king, and he would be the judge, right? So at like the most microcosmic level, that is what people can be in their own individual households. And so it creates order within society. But if you don't have that order within your own household, the society abroad is gonna lose order. So that I wrote a chapter about that in my book. Also, the conservative case for Bitcoin, I don't really talk about it as much these days because I find myself being a little more radical than conservative, and I don't think the label is appropriate anymore. But I did write that I published it during an election year, hoping that the right side of the political aisle would take the ball with Bitcoin and run with it. It seemed optimistic there for a second, but I think that's not going to happen. It doesn't look like at this point. They seem a little more preoccupied with other things and more of the altcoin poly market type of world rather than building an economy on sound money and traditional values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of controversy recently about, the executives from World Liberty Fi getting removed from the website. I think like the king analogy, people also say socialist. Like you want to be a socialist when it comes to your nuclear family. You're sharing everything. You're making decisions. You're allocating treats out to your kids if they're good and they do the chores or they don't. But then as you get down the spectrum of like farther and farther from your nuclear family, you're outside of your tribe village into like the government. And you're like, no, I don't want you to, controlling the capital from there.
Yeah, I'd be interested too to hear about if you have tried. Do you try orange pilling your friends or guys your age with this kind of thesis? Like, hey, the money is broken, and this is why you guys are living with 3 other dudes, and you can't afford to get married and have kids. Have you seen that be like an effective way to orange pill like people your age?
So I don't really try to orange pill people anymore. I kind of just let my life do the talking for me. And I think that's like the best testimony or witness I can give is, all right, I'm the only one of us that is married and can provide for his household. And it's no secret why I don't shy away from Bitcoin if people ask me. And like, obviously like pretty much everyone in my life knows what I do for a living. So I feel like that's the best way to orange pill people is just by success. So hopefully that works. So it kind of does, kind of doesn't at the same time. I think it's, you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. I gave up on initiating those conversations a long time ago, unfortunately.
That's good.
Yeah.
Let the life do the talking. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's going to look very different, like how we do that. I think if we're doing, with stuff like Square, where it's just going in, enabling it for all these merchants, I think is key. And I think especially if we're going to see another round of money printing coming out of like this oil shortage, we're looking at, long tail effects of that. I mean, 6 to 12 to 18 month range. People saying Strait of Hormuz being shut down is going to have a big effect that we're not ready for with summer travel, airline costs, which you hopefully people start to feel the effects of how our monetary system is set up and start to look elsewhere. But it takes time and people don't feel that pressure if they're in a very, like you mentioned, if they're conservative. Well, a lot of conservative people I know are, trust the banking system. They want to use a regional bank. They, are used to doing money market funds or mutual funds. And that's how they, see the world. And it's hard to get them to change.
Yeah. There's this weird dynamic where you would think the problems of fiat money getting worse would lead more people to Bitcoin. And it did for me. But at the same time, it makes people have less disposable income and they feel even more strain about allocating it to a magic internet money or any investment for that matter. So one of the most common criticisms I get when it comes to, trying to get people to understand Bitcoin, it's like, well, everything you're saying makes sense, but I don't actually have any money to put towards it. And so that's where it kind of comes back to our earlier discussion about using the tools, increasing your own personal capacity for generating income and value. Because if you don't have any excess value to store in Bitcoin, then Bitcoin doesn't really help you.
Yeah, completely agree. I feel like that's a messaging point that needs to be amplified a bit more too in the Bitcoin space. Like we were talking about earlier, everyone's always saying like, oh, just put your money into Bitcoin, sit and, go back to doing your work or your job. And it's just like, yeah, well, we're stretched pretty thin right now as a generation and just as a society. And so, yeah, I think we definitely should be pushing more of the, find a good cash flow, and whether that's 2 or 3 side hustles or I don't know, starting a business or whatever it is, we gotta find new streams of income.
Yeah, I think that messaging can work, especially with our generation, because if you're between 18 and 24, let's say, like it's very low pressure, right? Chances are you don't have a family you have to support. If you come from a nuclear family, like maybe this is a bold assumption to give, but like you probably have parents that can help you out in some capacity. So leveraging that youth and the time you have to just do what the stereotypical Bitcoiner thing to do, sell your chairs, cut out all your expenses, and just scrape and hustle for as many Satoshis as you can get over a 4 to 6 year period. that can give you that cushion to therefore go and start your own family. But that advice doesn't really work if you're mid 40s, already have kids, already kind of working paycheck to paycheck. You can't not feed your kids or make them eat rice and beans every day, you know?
Yeah.
Mitch, what's your next hot take? Like, what's a non-Bitcoin take that you feel like gets you kicked out of a group chat or riles people up? And you just talked about the family side, you know, which it's been a big theme that, like, hey, let's return to the nuclear family. We need to invest in this, find ways that we can give people economic certainty of, if you work really hard, you're going to have this life and career and sustainability. So you feel comfortable to go have kids. What's another take that you have that you want to share?
Yeah, non-Bitcoin related hot take that also won't get your YouTube channel banned. Let's see. Here's one. I'd be curious to see what you guys think. So I'm religious. I go to a very traditional Christian church. I've been reading the Bible regularly since I was probably 21, 22 years old. And I find there's this very like hard fork in my generation's like the style of worship. So the most common church in America now is actually non-denominational churches or Baptist. They're kind of the same thing, but it attracts like a female audience. And then the traditional style of worship, which is hymns, you don't have the worship bands, you don't have the smoke show, whatever, like that is men. And so you get like men and women going to different churches and then not actually meeting and starting a family. And this is kind of like somewhat unrelated to what we're talking about, but I'm definitely a fan of bringing back more traditional worship when it comes to religion. So actually not making a big spectacle out of it, right? Having reverence, you know, not making, you know, you see some of these like big non-denominational churches and you've got pastors advocating for the prosperity gospel, you know, donate to my church and God will reward you and you'll get good things. Or you'll have worship bands with 10 different instruments and people doing rap interludes and all this stuff that I think if we go back to the way our grandparents worshiped, which was with a hymn and a guy reading out of the Bible, I think that will pay dividends for our society and trying to advocate for more people to worship in that manner.
Good take.
I think I've seen this take on Twitter before, actually, from like it might have been like Raw Egg Nationalist or one of those like more traditional guys. And I think that's so true. Like I grew up going to like a non-denominational church, like definitely more of like a whole ordeal when it comes to worship. I saw a meme the other day. It's like, you know, you go to a mega church, like they got a mocktail bar, they got a merch stand, they got just like, it's turned into like a little corporation. So yeah, I think I would probably agree with that take. I haven't been to like a traditional church in a while, but that's probably very true because the church I go to is like very female dominated.
So that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, it is very much like they become like corporations. They try to, and I mean, since this is a Bitcoin show, I can tie in a financial incentive here because a lot of those churches, if they have so much overhead, the incentive becomes to get more people in the seat. And so how do you do that? Well, you have to start to dilute the actual message of Christianity and make the church more like the world, when in reality, it should kind of be a refuge from the world, right? It should be a place that is distinctly different from the rest of the world. And so when you start having mocktail bars and social hour and making it like a concert rather than like you're approaching the throne of God, you're straying further from the truth in favor of more people in the seats, more tithes, right? All that. So it's definitely advocate for traditional worship.
Yeah. I'll take the other side, not new age churches are better, but I do think on the side, some of where we are now is like a product of centralization, you know, with churches themselves. Like, you know, for so long you had the Vatican that like owns a ton of real estate throughout the world and just super valuable, obviously, real estate in Rome, their own like mini country. And then they also own like, you know, artwork and like, you know, jewelry and things that are just very materialistic that like are very against, you know, text in the Bible of like, you know, rend under Caesar that which is Caesar's, you know, give the fiat back. And I think that there's such a big centralized entity turned a lot of people off and just led to this fragmentation. And I think in the same way, you look at things, criticisms of, maybe the Church of Latter-day Saints, out of Utah's, why are they buying up real estate? Why is there like an half empty church up the road from my house that is just them sitting on valuable real estate in Oregon, which there's not a big population here for that. So I could be wrong. They could actually have a great congregation. No offense if anyone's listening from that congregation, but the more you get money involved, right? This is the same thing we talked about Bitcoin. It just corrupts people. They have the wrong incentives. I think one of the best things that I think sounds like what you're getting at in a pure sense is like pilgrims coming over in the 1500s. Think about the Mayflower. Think of, early settlers in America that were like had the Protestant work ethic, but they're pilgrims. They're cut off from the Catholic Church. They left, mainland Europe. Like my family came over as Huguenots, which is like French Protestants that were getting killed by the Catholics. So in that sense, there wasn't a lot of money there. So it was a much pure way of doing it because they didn't have anything to distract them. But I like the take, it pulls in culture and time.
Yeah. And it's interesting you bring up the Catholic Church because back on October 31st, that's Reformation Day. That's when Martin Luther nailed his 99 theses to the Catholic Church. And it's similar. Yeah, exactly. The original white paper. It's not a coincidence that Satoshi published the white paper on the same day. I actually believe that. So what was the idea behind the Protestant Reformation? The centralized entity of the Catholic Church has too much power. You can only hear the scriptures if you go to mass and have a bishop or a pope read it to you. And then in the 1500s, we got the printing press. Bibles became widely accessible, and guys like Luther start reading it. It's like, wait a second, this is what I'm reading in the Bible doesn't actually line up with what the centralized power is telling me. Let's decentralize these scriptures and let people read it for themselves, right? This is the authority, not the church that is composed of humans that have their own corrupt incentives. It's actually the raw primary source, which is the Bible. And so that's kind of the origin of the Protestant Reformation. Bitcoin's very similar, right? It's let's decentralize the power rather than having a central bank control the monetary system. Everybody can have their own monetary system by running a Bitcoin node, and we don't have to trust any institution. It's a trust-free system. The same way I don't have to go to church and trust that the bishop is going to accurately read the scriptures when I can read it for myself.
Yeah. No,
probably not where you guys thought this show was going to go, but like I said,
we got to change it up.
I'm happy to talk about it.
No, I like it.
Yesterday turned into a peptide show. We thought we were talking stocks, and then we just talked about peptides for 20 minutes.
You guys got to tell me more about it, because I guess it's just like a different type of steroid or non-natural way to get really lean. Is that the high level?
I mean, we'll have to come back for a more like detailed answer on the peptide show, but a lot of it's going to be like take these commercialized medicines like Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk with Wegovy or Mounjaro, all of these weight loss GLP-1 drugs, and those are essentially like peptides, and getting those and getting additional ones that aren't commercialized and aren't patented, then that's where people are experimenting and seeing what is improving their life. And Jonah Lupton, great guest yesterday. I personally haven't experimented, but he's done a ton of experimentation, and he admitted he's like, I'm not sure what like all of the effects, what's positive, but he feels that he has seen enough positive effects as he got in his 40s, working out. He looks pretty buff. So I think that the Bitcoin community, certainly on Twitter, looking at like alternative medicine, getting out of big pharma companies controlling what is good health and what you should be taking, really go hand in hand. So we like the conversation. We think people should know what they should info they're getting, and not just trust a Chinese company. His stock pick for it is Hims, because he's like, Hims is going to be US regulated, so they're going to crack down on Chinese shipments of peptides coming into the US, but not financial advice.
Interesting.
So
peptides are on the side of like the natural health people. They're in favor of peptides generally.
Yeah, but you're also injecting something. So
yeah, I would say I'm like a holistic health freak. I'm like kind of against the peptides. I'm just steak, eggs, and creatine is my holy grail.
Yeah, likewise.
I don't know if I'd ever inject something, but to each their own.
Let the other
Breed
people
love
be the
and
guinea
yeah,
pigs.
exactly.
20 milligrams per team. That's our daily stat goal as a team. We don't always hit it, but we talk about it.
Yeah. Well, Mitch, it was awesome having you. We all three of us will be at Vegas, so hopefully we can all meet.
To get up.
Yeah,
100%.
Sure.
Appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's a blast, and happy to come back on anytime.
Amazing. Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you guys.
We will be right back after this intro. Welcome back. Christopher, good to have you with us. Co-host
Hello.
Sam.
Hello from the Bitcoin capital of the world, Austin, Texas. Pleb Labs, to be specific.
Wow. We have Halston, co-host on the first hour. She's down with you in Austin too.
Good. All the cool kids are coming here. We just finished recording our latest. So you guys are doing a great job. You got nice little bumper things. You got the scrolling things. Me and Carr here, we're making our own show called OAPN, right? So TPBN acquired by our nemesis OpenAI. So we need our own propaganda arm. So we've created our own show called the Openagents Propaganda Network. We just recorded episode 5. It's pretty cool. But we got to steal your kind of like bumper stuff here. Looking great.
Hit me up after. I'll show you how to do it. That's awesome. Second half's always fun. We're getting a hot start. Sam, how are you doing? Co-host. Always good to see
What's
you.
up, guys? Yeah, thrilled to be here. It sounds like we're about to have an interesting conversation, so I'm definitely ready for it.
Yeah. And a lot of fun things to talk about. So we're going to talk about the Bitcoin AI crossover, which we love. We're looking for a new wallet provider for our OpenClaw agent. So going to start testing that today. Rest in peace to our friends over at Neutron Pay. They announced they're shutting down this week, but we've had a lot of fun with them, paying out Lightning sats to different people using OpenClaw live on the show. So now we're going to a good chance to experiment, see what's out there on the Lightning side. But first, Christopher, as our esteemed guest, let's talk about Openagents. Tell us a little bit about what you're building, and then we'll get into some of the latest news after that.
For sure. So Openagents aiming to be America's leading open source AI lab. We happen to be building on open protocols, the Bitcoin Stack, Bitcoin, Lightning, Mstr. I started Openagents literally the day after Sam Altman's presentation on November 6th, 2023, Dev Day. They said, we're going to launch this GPT store. So they're sort of precursor to agents called GPTs. They think agents are going to be the future. We're going to launch GPTs. We're going to launch a GPT store, let developers build up agents, and we're going to pay revenue sharing to developers. And I made a video the very next day, episode 1 of what's now a 223 episode series called Openagents. And I said, they're going to half-ass that. There's no way that they're going to do what they should do, which is pay contributors to agents, streaming money, Bitcoin micropayments directly to their wallet, proportional to paid usage. That's how it should be. They have released no details about what their implementation will be, but they're going to half-ass it, I know. Well, we did it on our last OAPN episode 2 days ago. We asked ChatGPT. We said, hey, ChatGPT, remember back 2.5 years ago, Sam Altman was like, we're going to pay rev share to developers. His revenue sharing is very important to us. I was like, ChatGPT, how much have they shared to users? And ChatGPT was like, $1 billion. No, wait a second. Who was that to? Oh, that was to Microsoft. No. Yeah. How much to developers? $0. They paid $0. Okay. So every AI lab has paid $0. And Openagents, we've only paid 50 developers, but that's still infinity% more than everyone else combined. And we think that really this idea of build agents on open protocols, build products as sort of these combinations of plugins and tools and skills and MCPs, all of the things that go into agents can and should be separately addressable, separately discoverable, separately monetizable. So if you as a developer, you contribute a plugin that gets used in a paid workflow and it's used by a business or whatever, and they've got millions of dollars worth of revenue using that agent, and they're using your plugin, you should have a percentage of that paid to your wallet. Okay. No one's done that. We think it's very logical. What we've come to realize in the past, 2024, we launched a very basic agent store with paying people micropayments. We built like little pieces of this. And what we've come to realize recently is that we really have to own the whole stack, starting with compute. There's a massive supply and compute constraint, whereas this is a huge opportunity for Bitcoiners, because if you have spare, what we call stranded compute on your desktop, you're not using it. But it can be used in these agentic workflows, right? So the idea is, let's pay you for it. Let's pay you for the compute. So the software that we launched, if you go to openagents.com right now, you can download our software we call Pylon. It's a piece of software. You run it on your desktop, and it's going to contribute part of your computer's compute to whatever we choose to use it for. In the past, we launched a version of this a couple years ago where we had decentralized inference, fine-tuning, embedding, image generation, all behind an OpenAI compatible API endpoint. So a developer could hit that API endpoint, the sats go out to whomever provides the compute. The thing that we're most excited about now is training. So there's a bunch of these other kind of like crypto projects, BitTensor, Prime Intellect, that are trumpeting like, hey, we do decentralized training runs. And we've had this one BitTensor, I love making fun of them. They like, well, we just did the largest training run in the world, 70 participants. NVIDIA, CDO, most valuable company in the world, Jensen, CEO, 2 weeks ago at GTC. They're shouting out this project, Covenant. They've got 3 different BitTensor subnets. You don't have to pay too much attention to these shitcoin details, but we'll just tell you that like Jensen shouted them out. It was like, we're starting to see decentralized training, people contributing compute from everywhere in the world into these training runs. Their project basically blew up. Typical kind of shitcoin. Can I swear here? Shitcoin drama. You can bleep me out if you have to. Typical shitcoin drama last week. What happened? Covenant took their whole subnet, like the most popular subnet of BitTensor, and they left the network. The founder rugged $10 million, dumped their token, and like they're leaving to form their other network. And now the founder of BitTensor is all pissed off, and they're trying to organize their own thing. It's like, this is all hilarious. But what can we do as Bitcoiners? My thesis is that all of these altcoin chains are basically doing glorified R&D for Bitcoin. You know, we had Bitcoin back years ago. We had the sort of original sin of Ethereum saying, oh, you can't do all this computation inside of Bitcoin. We need Turing computation. Let's make a separate chain. Then that leads to all these like shitcoins. But my view is that the shitcoin universe expanded. It's now contracting. Things are being built and rebuilt in layers adjacent to Bitcoin. You got all sorts of altcoin protocols shutting down because the volume isn't there. The use cases aren't there. They've had 12 years to deliver anything other than gambling to like real use cases. They haven't. Bitcoin is starting to absorb more and more. And we are excited to be on the forefront of pulling these use cases out of shitcoin land, taking what good R&D they're doing, because I'll give credit to Prime Intellect, credit to BitTensor, credit to Noose. They've done some good work in taking like legit distributed training algorithms, for example, out of Google DeepMind. They had a paper 2 years ago introducing Deloco, which is like this really serious algorithm for how you can split up a training run across distributed devices. You don't have to be just having one data center. They've said, okay, here's how we add all these like verification mechanisms and like, let's throw a blockchain on here and tie the token to this up. And then they did these training runs, and all the code's open source. And so we've had fun pointing our like super duper coding agents and being like, hey, you see that, and that GitHub repo, pull that into our Openagents code base, port it to Rust, remove the shitcoin, replace it with Bitcoin, remove the blockchain dynamics, replace it with Mstr, because all of these things around decentralized coordination and everything that like an altcoiner will tell you that you need their network for, you don't need their network. I have yet to hear a single technical reason why you need a blockchain for any of this, why you need a distribute, like all of that stuff can be done with Bitcoin, with Lightning, with Mstr. Haven't seen anything that can't be done with that. And so to be able to then have a way to pay people directly for their compute, pay them Bitcoin. We now have way more people than we can even meaningfully use their compute for. But now, so like starting today, and that episode that we just recorded is all about distributed training. We're launching our distributed training run this week. It'll take us a couple of weeks to kind of spin that up. But we now have about 100 people running our software. So on different devices, they're running our software. Max, NVIDIA GPUs, just random, like disparate compute. Some devices are decent. Some devices are weak. But like we've got a system now that can split up the work of a training run to those people. And so can you imagine what happens when we take the kinds of CapEx that these big labs are raising billions and tens of billions of dollars on compute build out and paying, who are they paying? NVIDIA, they're paying big cloud. And can you imagine if we could redirect that to Bitcoiners instead? Holy shit.
Yeah. I'll I'm gonna jump in a question, and then I'll let Sam let you go. So at the basic level, say I got super into OpenClaw. I watched Alex Finn. I bought a $20,000 Mac Studio, and now people are like, "Oh, like you probably don't need that." Like there's an argument for both. I think like it is smart to buy consumer hardware now. Apple I think removed one of the Mac Mini options. Like hardware is going to get more expensive, so I do think it's smart to get quality hardware now. But like $20,000 on Mac Studios is I think excessive. So let's say if you fell down that path, you followed, you believed, I need to get a local model immediately now. It's February. I bought a Mac Studio. This is how you can monetize it at a basic sense. So use the basic level, get it, renting out your compute, but then do some of the user get more compensation if they're also doing longer training runs? Is that
for sure? Yeah, for sure. Wait, and my first instinct when you said spending X $1,000s on hardware to run OpenClaw, like my first what I want to say is sorry for your loss, but it's not a loss. It shouldn't be a loss. It's like you've spent all this money, and people have spent all this money on, you could call it an investment in your personal sovereignty, and like that's all nice. But I think a lot of people made the hardware commitment because they thought they'd be getting that much economic value out of this, and maybe some have. But at the same time, like, yes, you if you do have powerful local hardware, I can essentially guarantee you that you are not making use or full use of that compute, particularly for something like OpenClaw, where all it's really doing is running, largely API calls if you're using the default setup, the recommended setup of using Claude Code, although that's increasingly difficult with Anthropic's. The Mac Minis, they can run some decent models, but here's the more powerful idea. So you've got these like kind of smart AI analysts, Gavin Baker for one, these big like public market investors analyzing the compute market, and they're saying, hey, it's going to be a big risk potentially to big labs if edge or local AI gets more powerful. These devices are getting more powerful, and if your phone can give you a response it's like more or less equivalent to what the big models can, then hey, this might erode into the margins of the big companies, and that might take 3 years to play out. I say, well, you're directionally accurate there, but you're missing a big piece there. If you're only looking at what one device can do for that user, okay, that's worth analysis. But if we can start to aggregate that compute and say, hey, you person, you're not using your device most of the time. If you have access to like this essentially limitless pool of compute, it's not limitless. We've did our own analysis and we saw that, okay, look, OpenAI, $850 billion lab, has 2 gigawatts of compute. That's their numbers, end of 2025. Hey, Chat GPT, how much compute is sitting out there on people's computers, stranded spare compute? About 20 gigawatts is sitting there. So 10 times what the $850 billion lab has is just sitting there. Yes, we absolutely want to start tapping into that. It's going to start by letting people who have agents that are not productive as they should be starting to monetize some of that. But like, we also want to build products tightly on top of that. So we want to have our own answer for OpenClaw. Yeah, it'll be cool if you can plug in your OpenClaw to this network and tap into like your own local compute, maybe some Swarm compute. You start saving some money, you start generating a little bit of money. But we also want to build products on top of this. Like, are there products like our name for our version of OpenClaw is going to be called Autopilot? You'll see more of that in the next, probably this summer. We're going to do a big re-release of Autopilot. What we want to have drop-in replacements for these things that are not dependent on Anthropic. We basically want to start from a standpoint of, what if we stand on this stranded sovereign compute where we don't have to care what the big labs are doing. We don't even really have to pay attention to all of the supply constraints and the hardware and all the stuff that all the big labs were just buying from NVIDIA because they haven't solved for edge compute. Can we build our own AI lab on top of edge compute? We'll have access to a massive amount of compute. And I'll tell you one more thing here. NVIDIA CEO Jensen, he made my favorite line that he said at GTC was, there is a linear correlation in essentially every AI company between how much compute they have and their revenue and their valuation. So if the $850 billion leader, OpenAI, has 2 gigawatts, and we are the company, we are the network, the Bitcoin network can unlock that 20 gigawatts, bring it to market, We're talking about the most valuable, potentially, company and network in the world. And yes, I do think this is going to propel Bitcoin's next phase of growth for sure.
I like it. Sam, I'll let you jump in there. What you got?
Well, it's really interesting. I don't know if you guys saw the news from either yesterday or the day before, but did you guys hear about Allbirds, the foot company, and what they're planning to do? Yeah. So I thought this was like kind of directly in line with what we were just saying. I mean, the long story short of it is basically, if I understand it correctly, they sold their entire shoe brand. I think it was 40 or 50 million. And they're basically transforming 100% of their business from this, consumer footwear brand into what they're calling GPU as a service and basically like AI cloud infrastructure. So I feel like that's kind of in line with what we were just discussing, but it's mind blowing. I mean, one of the most random things I've ever heard.
I saw someone post this response tweet, like news item from a few years ago about some company that like adopted blockchain and their like stock shot up 6x from a few years ago. So there's some people are like, this is toppy bubble behavior, maybe, but also this one tweet from VP of content from Unchained, Stephen Hall, also I think here in Austin, like he quote tweeted that and he said, if you think this is .com bubble vibes, you don't understand the magnitude of what's happening. Like there actually is a big platform shift. There wasn't a real platform shift toward enterprise blockchain or all of that crap, but there is a massive platform shift to like people want to be running inference. They want to be doing all this stuff all the time. Like I want to be spending like 1,000x more on compute and tokens, and everything's constrained. And it's just like, hey, there's a massive pool of compute that people aren't using, and we can pay people Bitcoin for it. And then those people who we are paying Bitcoin for are going to be motivated for us to build more products and services so they can get paid more Bitcoin. It's like that clearly deserves its own AI lab. So we're calling that Openagents Inc.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's really interesting. So would you say that in terms of like innovation from AI in itself, is the main constraint compute? Because I feel like, you look at someone like Anthropic, and even this morning, they're having a bunch of outages, people tweeting about it, freaking out about it. I'm trying to get work done. It's not working. I can count on one hand the amount of times ChatGPT has had those outages over the last couple of years. So I'm just curious, like your thoughts about compute in general. Is that the main constraint?
It's a huge constraint, but there's other related things. If you are a centralized lab full of people who are, let's say, not exactly professional or like top tier software engineers or top tier infrastructure people, like, sorry, Anthropic, but like you have a single 9 of reliability. Your products are buggy pieces of shit. Yep. Forgive me, but like you have the same rendering issue for 9 months. You like got to have an epilepsy warning because your thing is so laggy. Why? They're vibe coding their entire infrastructure. Yeah. And what happens? You see this theme of Microsoft and all these companies are like, hey, we're replacing our engineers with AI. And then like outage, slot product, slot. So like this other tweet today is like, what, like AI is so powerful at software engineering, but like we're having all these outages and shitification. So the missing piece there, it's not just compute, it's not just intelligence, it's also coordination of the intelligence. So, and part of this just gets to like network structure. And like, if you're expecting a single lab, hey, we're going to be the gatekeeper to everybody's AI, and hey, give us control over the U.S. government's national security and like, oh, nuclear defense? Yeah, put us right in there. Oops, vibe coded, let a nuke through. Like, you can't let any centralized entity have that level of control. We can't let, as our individuals, them have veto rights over like, oh, hey guys, we need the compute to give to our big corporate clients. We're going to nerf Opus. Like, we need that level of control over ourselves. And part of the beautiful thing about what Bitcoin has is like the Bitcoin blockchain, and that it's essentially this market of compute, of computation, like block creation markets. And I got this idea from I think Drew Bonsall and Ryan Gentry had this video at Bitcoin 2021 like years ago called the Bitcoin stack, and how there's all these layers and there's really this market mechanism, and they're talking about how someday there's going to be this like a lightning powered marketplace for compute. And we're just taking these ideas and like building the networks and building, like coding them up. But like this idea that there's going to be just pure market forces addressing all of this. Compute's going to be a purely liquid market priced in Bitcoin because it's energy adjacent money and computation. Like all this stuff is completely logical for Bitcoin. And I think the coordination is going to kind of be relatively rapidly organized in meaningful ways on top of Bitcoin. You'll start to see that really play out over the coming months.
Well, you mentioned Opus kind of losing a lot of juice over the last couple of weeks, which people have been talking about. And, a business is entitled to deploy their resources how they want. But a question that I have is, as someone that's running an AI business like yourself, if I'm signed up for Anthropic, right, I'm paying $200 a month. I'm expecting a certain amount of output or a certain level of quality. I mean, how can they do that? How can they just say, hey, you know what, we need to provide our enterprise customers with more compute, so we're going to make Opus 25% as powerful as it once was? I mean, to me, that just seems like a huge issue in the industry.
Issue for sure, but at the same time, like, we're all in this sort of bizarro world of venture money flying around. No one has any real idea of what the actual economics are. I've since like canceled my Anthropic stuff months ago, but like when I was using Claude Code, there's a little script that you can run that tells you, based on your usage of Claude Code, what you would have paid in API costs if you were using the API. And I was doing $6,000 a month worth of inference for $200 a month. It's like, they can't sustain that. So obviously they're not going to, but at the same time, even if, let's say I'm getting $6,000 a month worth of value out of it, or $1,000 a month worth of value, even if they like impair my experience by 50%, it's very frustrating for me, but it's still like insanely valuable. Like, it's insanely priced. Like, to get your own junior engineer essentially for $200 a month, it's crazy. It's not priced correctly. This is part of one of the things I hope to see our ecosystem solve, which is, if you build it not on top of what the venture subsidy is, not on top of like what shitcoin can I dump on retail and then do weird token economics, but real Bitcoin value for value. What are you willing to part with your Bitcoin for? And let's find out what that is. Because if we can find something where you are happy to pay Bitcoin for something that uses compute, but it's like built on top of that, that can grow very, very, very fast. Because like I said, there's essentially more or less limitless 20 gigawatts. There's more compute than we could even use. And the current market price of it is zero. As soon as we can build a product that you're like, oh, I like this a little bit better than OpenClaw, I like this a little bit better than Claude Code, it's going to grow crazily. And it's not dependent on venture subsidies. It's not dependent on shitcoins. It's like actual value. So this is the main thing. Over the coming months, you're going to see us shift our focus from compute increasingly to products. All of our products are open source. They can all be run on local hardware. We're going to be paying developers bounties in addition to the revenue share stream to help us build this. And Anthropic, everyone's all freaking about, oh, Anthropic's going to build their own version of Lovable and they're going to replace the enterprise. We are going to build our own version of Anthropic's entire product suite. How do you like them apples on open protocols in all this way, rev share out, paying out to people. And I think that wins.
Yeah, I think the compute bottleneck is real, as we've obviously seen, but like continuing. We don't think it's going to stop. We don't think the DRAM and the memory shortage is going to stop. This is an article that James, the partner of Noah Breyer from Alephic, I think it was coming on the show in a couple of weeks, the demand prediction trap. So Dario from Anthropic says, I could assume that revenue will continue growing 10x per year. I could buy 1 trillion of compute that starts at the end of 2027. If my revenue is not 1 trillion, if it's 800 billion, there's no force on earth, there's no hedge on earth that could stop me from going bankrupt. So there's real risk. And the reason that Anthropic is essentially shutting down today, and it's not like there's going to be a lot of different reasons, but one of them is that they haven't overcapitalized on compute because they're not sure how much of this is like how much, you're using 6,000 in API credits, but you're paying $200, and they're not sure how, like they've rolled out these different consumer products so fast, but adoption, they're not sure how this is going to translate to business value. We have a war in Iran, how much that's going to affect people's like ability to spend.
You can especially tell how nervous they are by how hard they're doing these fear-mongering campaigns whose audience is clearly DC policymakers, both Anthropic and OpenAI. Ooh, booga booga, this is going to put out tons of people out of work. And and what are they advocating for? Oh, we need UBI and all these like socialist policies. And we need, you need to regulate AI labs. And we need these wealth funds. And my point in our last video here was like, nothing prevents a company who cares about sharing the wealth more broadly from paying dividends today. We're doing that. We're paying dividends. We've paid more dividends than all of you. But what are they doing? They're running the classic playbook of regulatory capture. It's let's buy off a bunch of DC politicians to pass laws that favor us and erect barriers to smaller players. They're terrified of smaller players. They're terrified of open source. They're going to be spraying a whole bunch of BS and fear and really just frankly bullshit leading up to their IPOs later this year, which they hope for. And our argument is going to be like, they're not building the final form of AI. They're not even building a resilient version of AI. And I hope to increasingly be showing people an alternative that is sustainable. Can you guys put up openagents.com on the big screen here?
Yeah. We could do a basic little look up. And we want to give people, I mean, the point of the show is like, we're a Bitcoin show, but like we have Sam on it, and Sam is like actively helping people go in and use AI respectively and like actually apply it. Like, how can you make someone in like, you know, he lives in Georgia, I'm from Georgia. How can you make it a non-technical person understand if I invest in this, you know, particular like.
No, that's .org or some shit. Openagents.com.
Yeah, you got the .com. That's the domain. But we want to make it applied, and this is a much better sell if we can say, hey, look, you can start, you know, for the capital you invest, you can start earning rent money off of that.
For sure. So generally, I'll tell you, your audience at any time ever can always go to openagents.com. You can see a live picture of the status of our network. As of the next day or two, you'll be able to click and see our live training runs, what compute of what device type is getting paid what amount of Bitcoin to produce what. All of the models that we train are going to be open source. All the products we build are open source. You'll see links to our Discord and stuff. So please get involved. If you got compute, we'll buy it from you. And then, you know, right now we're just going to give you a little bit of Bitcoin. But the idea is to build a market so that other companies that are trying to train models, other companies that are trying to use services on top of this like stable foundation are all able to pay you either for your compute, or if you're a developer, you're helping to build agent plugins and things. Like, we want to get you paid Bitcoin. How Openagents wins, that my like final thought is, we want to win because we're paying you, developers, compute providers, the most Bitcoin. So you're going to help us build up the best products and services because you want to get paid more Bitcoin. And that's how we do it. We get actual revenue flowing in and then share it with you.
Yeah, Sam, I think you've maybe seen it's people talk about, and we're talking about like OpenClaw influencers, you know, Hermes agent influencers, which is the thing now. Is like, how are you actually making money from it? Are you, you know, people say they're running 10 agents 24/7, but like, it's so the management layer is where I get hung up because I'm always managing these cron jobs and processes. And I'm like, I need to like actually get something done and like a task and like what's actually going to be a differentiator instead of just making content, which I think, you know, content is valuable, but that's not the average person that's running a business doesn't always just need to make OpenClaw content. They actually need to like, if they're, you know, small business, like landscaping company, they need to manage orders. They need to like do customer support. Some of the stuff that like is possible with these tools, these agents, but it's hard to get there. It's hard to make it like durable, especially if Anthropic's having outages.
There's a whole bunch of people, including Anthropic, that are trying to solve for that complexity. Like here, use our managed agents platform so you don't have to think about X, Y, or Z. And I shared a tweet yesterday where someone was like, oh yeah, run your cron job on Anthropic's unreliable infrastructure with a single 9 available. Like, no, like Anthropic, you cannot credibly like lead this or power everyone's agents. You can't even keep your basic website online, like on top of a whole bunch of unsustainable economics. Like, it has to be broadened out more broadly than that. And there's going to be there's like literally infinity different startups in Silicon Valley and different projects trying to do, like, everyone's trying to do hosted OpenClaw. Everyone's trying to do managed OpenClaw. Everyone's trying to do their own version. If everyone's trying to do their own little version, what does the final form of that look like? And we just think that there's going to be a market, a network that aggregates network effect. The only place that's logical for that network effect to aggregate is on top of the Bitcoin stack, because a lot of these problems of discoverability, monetization, like, can and should be solved by what we have with the Bitcoin Lightning Mstr network. We are the final destination for those things. So anyone building on the Bitcoin stack, here's where we have the answers to all of those things.
Sam, I'll let you jump in. I got one though.
Well, go ahead. I had something kind of unrelated that was brought up a minute ago that I want to touch on. So go ahead and reply to that.
So outside of these like main frontier models, what are you seeing? What's like the development of open source models? People looking at Gemma from Google. There's obviously like new ones coming out. I put out a tweet the other day of like, oh, I'm using like Kimi K 2.5, for a cron job, and then I had some issues troubleshooting it, and it just comes back in all like Cantonese or Mandarin right back at me, and I'm like, this is exactly why you don't do this. This is why I'm not using Moonshot for anything serious. And but these are little lessons you learn. What are you seeing like with the development of like open source models being used by the public?
Yeah, for sure. Briefly, can I send you guys a link to put up? Do I have a chat with you?
Yeah. Private chat on the right hand side bottom.
Connect to comment. I can't do that. Anyways, I'll just read this tweet. Someone today, Mo, this analyst guy, was saying like the models that are out there, open or closed, they're largely trained on the same data, which is you've got all of the LinkedIn, all of the like Reddit type data. And as a result, all of the models that are out there kind of lead to what you call trend slop. It's AI's tendency to recommend whatever sounds good on LinkedIn instead of what actually works for your situation. Mo, he says, we thought AI was going to make everyone a genius. Instead, it's pulling smart people towards the middle. And our comment on this is like, well, sure, but you can imagine that there should be new models not trained on Reddit and LinkedIn midwittery. Why pay more for the big labs fire hose of slop when you can pay a few Bitcoin sats for the fine-tuned model that you need? So imagine lightweight models that keep learning over time because the contributors of the better data earn Bitcoin sats. Models that continually learn and improve, standing on top of this essentially limitless pool of fracked compute. We call it compute fracking. So we think this is the basis for a new kind of frontier lab that's going to knock the big guys on their ass, because there's no reason why we have to start from there. Now, there may be in the intermediate time, like, okay, sure, let's use Gemma as a starting point. Let's use Quen as a starting point and do some fine tuning. But we think that there's enough compute out there, there's enough demand for this out there, that there should be our own models. Project a couple years ago, Svetsky, Spirit of Satoshi, they kind of started doing this. They did, I think they were doing fine tuning, but like taking this idea of like, let's train a model that's not this like woke, watered down BS, and like, let's do a Bitcoin Rothbardian version of this. And they curated their own data sources and they crowdsourced, a bunch of Bitcoiners. I think they paid them some Bitcoin sats to like do kind of the RLHF process, and they like trained a model, and it was like a measurable improvement. But like, instead of just having that as a one-off, there should be a whole system for that where like anybody can contribute data at any time. Let's say that you're an expert on some particular topic, like that should be factored in and pulled into an agent workflow, not as part of one monolithic model that's reflecting all of the priorities of these like San Francisco people that are training it. There should be like lightweight edge models that get pulled in when you need it. So I want the absolute like most brilliant aerospace engineer model or agent or plugin or data source when I'm doing CAD to design an aircraft. I don't want to have that. You can't expect like a massive monolithic model to do that. So moving these things out to the edge, obviously all this needs to be open. It's really great that we have models like Gemma and Quen, but some of the problems there is like Gemma's not fully open source. We don't have their data mix, right? We don't know what data. So true open source means it's reproducible. You can reproduce it full stack. NVIDIA right now does the best job at this. They release their data. The problem with NVIDIA's models is they're really only optimizing for NVIDIA. They don't really care about having their stuff supported on Mac or AMD devices. And so we think this is actually a big opportunity for us to start training our own models. This is why we're starting to spin up our own distributed training mechanism, because if we can point to, hey, here's a path for us to build up a pipeline, both for us to want to use these models in our own products and offer experiences that the big labs are not going to be able to because they're not solving for the edge like this, build up a pipeline that, number one, we're happy to send our Bitcoin through to train models, but then to have that pipeline be reusable for other people. We want to get to the point where these kinds of limitations that people are accustomed to taking sort of for granted, that like, oh, AI pulls things to the middle and dumbs things down. That's not AI. That's the current structure of labs who are optimizing around a particular path They've raised all this money to bet huge on this one particular infrastructure of like centralized data centers. This is they're increasingly realizing that that's not going to get them to like AGI or their goals of like utopia or whatever they're trying to bring about. So now you're starting to see all this fear mongering and propaganda and regulatory stuff. Whereas like we can actually say, wait a second, let's think about this all from first principles. We don't have to accept all this, all of the like recipes for pre-training and post-training and training your own models is all out there. You can train models that do cool stuff for like a few $100,000, a few $1 million. Like the Bitcoin community can ourselves pay for that kind of stuff. So let's solve these things from a different angle.
So do you see a future where instead of, having you have your main closed labs, you have your main open source labs? Do you see a future where there's, hundreds, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands models where it's like, I have this specific thing that I want to do. Let's just say I want to build a custom home, right? And I go to the custom home model, essentially. Like, do you see that future where it's decentralized across, where there's just different models for different tasks and you basically just jump in there instead of the main ones? Because like you said, the frustration with the ChatGPTs and Geminis and whatever is that they're really good at broad, but when you really want to get specific, that's where they seem to kind of break down and not have the expertise or the data, if you will, to be able to get the output you need.
So yes to that idea, but more than just the model, really all up and down, like any given, and part of why we call the company Openagents is because we think that the types of products that people interact with are going to be like agentic products or agents. Claude Code, for example, like you're not just interfacing directly with the model called Claude. Like you can have a chat conversation. You have a chat conversation with ChatGPT, but the thing that's been like the massive unlock for a bunch of developer productivity and cool use cases has been taking that model and putting it into this agentic harness where now it's able to, you're connecting tools to it. It's able to like take all these cool actions on your behalf. So I don't just want a model that's going to tell me stuff. I want a model that can like create, just as an example, I want to design a new type of spacecraft. And I want to have a CAD software that like fully and perfectly represents all of the kinds of constraints that you need in the CAD software, and have the model / agent be able to like take meaningful action and like run all sorts of simulations and stuff. That requires like more than just the model. It requires the harness and the data and like tool use and like, so because no one we think has like really solved for all of this, we've realized that like, there really should be sort of a full stack vertically integrated approach to solving all these things. Like we want to build models on top of this compute. We want to like line up the compute, build the models on top of that, build the agents on top of that, line up the data, build products on top of that, and then eventually sell that to enterprise and have the enterprise flow through, and like we will have the dominant product suite, all open, all extensible, but like built on the proper principles.
How hard is it to do the consumer side while also doing the training side? I feel like that's consumer products are so hard versus like B2B products, to where to make it work, like you really have to like fine tune UI, UX, and it's competitive.
The beautiful part about open source is that we can stand on the shoulders of giants. OpenClaw has proven the demand for personal agents. They've solved some very key sort of UI, UX, like all the stuff that OpenClaw does technically was possible a year ago, but it wasn't until they combined things in a proper way. They had an onboarding process where you're like naming it and you're giving it a personality and you're starting to connect stuff to it. And for a lot of people, it was just this magic moment. Now, their code base is like has the problems of success where like you get 250,000 GitHub stars, you've got like infinity pull requests per day, you got this like really like sloppy code base that that empowers another lab that we have a lot of respect for. Noose comes along and they build their own version, Hermes agent, where they're like, okay, that's really cool, but like let's take a subset of that, build a lightweight version of that, and now like my whole timeline's shifting from OpenClaw to Hermes. And so we're like, okay, we're gonna focus on our agent. Let's start with Hermes. Pull this, pull that, pull that, pull that, and we'll have our version, and someone else will come and take. But we want to get to a point where instead of people needing to keep yo-yoing between products, it's like we want to build this sort of like, you call it continual learning apparatus, where our agent ideally should be the last agent that you even need to install, because the latest tool, the latest code, the latest model, the latest anything just gets automatically pulled in. And you could theorize that, like, oh, maybe some closed lab is going to really focus and provide a better experience. Maybe, but like my bet is that the best stuff is going to be open source, in part because people are going to care about having data ownership and data privacy. And you might think, like a few months ago, you might think, well, oh, only us Bitcoiners and us privacy nerds like care about sovereignty, and everyone else is going to be happy sending all their data to Anthropic. I mean, I think I've noticed on my timeline more kind of like normie, just kind of technical people and non-technical people start to realize, oh, wait a second, like this dependency that I've built on Anthropic, where now I can't log in and use this account that I'm paying for with my agent, or the quality is decreasing and I can't explain why. I think a lot of people have started to recognize that like there's big problems with the dependence on the central labs or really any third-party provider, and open source really provides the answer to that.
Yeah, I think I talked to a guy on last Friday, and he works at a construction company and does a lot of like CAD and design. He's like, look, I want to use AI tools, but I'm really not sure the data security policy, what's allowed to be put into it. I don't want to get fired. And I think that's going to apply to a lot of people. They're just, maybe they're not big privacy advocates, but they realize, oh, if I'm going to do this, I need to really make sure I have my security button down, so I'm not sharing sensitive data out into the wild with some company that, you know, could get shut down by the government or go in some lawsuit, and there's depositions where they pull out the data. Like, who knows?
Guys, please forgive me. I have to jump off, but we will be in Vegas. I'm talking on the why AI agents will want Bitcoin open source stage on the 28th. We'll be at Nas Vegas. I'll have a bunch of our team in Vegas, so please, hopefully we can link up there and talk more about agents. Check out openagents.com. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher.
See you, man.
Take care.
What a treat. He came in hot as we're talking about the conference. We are going to pull up our side event list. You know, we had some fun. Avi had some fun yesterday creating a side event list for the Bitcoin Vegas conference. It's coming up in a week or two. We are media partners, so we're not hosting an event ourselves, but we will be at many of these. And for all the plebs and normal people, we want you to get access to them. So we'll share this in the chat below. Might have to clean up some stuff because we just created it yesterday, but nice little resource for those going to Las Vegas. Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, that was super interesting. He's clearly in it deep, and it's always interesting to get the perspective of a builder, you know, because it's just so different than someone that's reading news headlines. So definitely appreciated that.
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of angles to look at of like getting people to care about open source, you know, getting people to care about data privacy. Like these are, you know, have been challenges. The easiest thing a lot of times is using the frontier model that's like Sonnet or Opus or, you know, ChatGPT 5.4, because it works well. They want to have something they can like talk to, and it solves the problem. You know, people don't want to tinker with agents necessarily. Not everyone does. They just want to solve whatever task that is. So I think in pushing forward, you know, decentralized compute, decentralized, you know, model development, it takes some work on the consumer side to get traction.
Yeah, you know, I feel like a huge challenge, especially with a lot of the open source stuff, is just building something that's as clean and straightforward as Claude or ChatGPT, you know, because most people are not technical, right? And the idea of an agent probably sounds great to them, but the concept of going to GitHub or, you know, getting OpenClaw, all the steps they need to do, they're just not going to do that. So they want to go into, you know, Claude or Chat or Gemini, whatever, and just be able to fire off some tasks. And so I feel like that's something that the world of open source and just even the smaller companies are going to really have to figure out how to build out a product that's just easy. Because most people, you know, even like my parents, they're technical. They're really pretty decent with technology. But when it gets to this type of stuff, they just kind of, their face goes blank and they don't really know what to do. So I feel like that's a really big step that'll make things, once that happens, it should be a lot easier to democratize access to all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. The software development and product building, that is something centralized companies are just going to move faster on.
Yeah, they're just doing,
thinking of ways and finding ways to make it where it's democratized is good. And we see a lot of others, but compute, you know, has been a bottleneck. So hopefully, I'm hoping these guys work out so that, you know, small
something that was super interesting is, I think it was this week. So Jane Street, which is a huge quantitative trading firm, they invested $1 billion into CoreWeave. And CoreWeave is basically, they operate GPU clusters, basically. So for large scale AI training, which we were just talking about. And essentially, from what I understood, the main goal of this is so that they can work with NVIDIA to help smaller AI providers scale faster. That's the sentence that I read. And so I do think that we're headed in that direction for sure. And it's just a matter of who's going to execute it first. You know, like we said, we've had the first kind of couple agents blow up and get really popular. And each one, I think, becomes a little bit more user friendly. And then Anthropic rolls out their competitor version of it. So I do think we're headed to a world where if the compute side can be solved, all these other issues are going to fall into place. And I just see, like Mark Andreessen's talked about, AI is essentially just going to become the underlying layer of reality. I feel like that's such a good way to put it. You walk up to your house, it scans your face, it lets you in. You're making a payment, your agent, goes and makes sure it's all good and goes to the next step. So, the compute part is the tough part, but I feel like that'll be solved for. It's just a matter of money and time.
Yeah. What's been happening in the business this week? What's been like kind of your developments? Like what it's been the common threads of like projects you've been working on, like what agents, what tools?
Yeah, well, actually, security is a huge one. You're just talking about security and working with these investment bankers out of Texas and trying to build some really cool agents into their business. But security is obviously a huge issue, right? Because they have clients' contact info, or not contact, but clients, proprietary business information coming in. They have their own proprietary information. And they're like, look, if we put this into Claude or Chat or whatever, are they going to get this information? Is it going to leak out? Is he going to, what's going to happen there? And pretty much every single business that I talk to has this concern of security, and it's a valid concern too. And so really, if there's any business owners out there that are wondering about this, I think you were saying someone wants to put in the, into the CAD system, put it into the software and see if it can get some output. I mean, that's a tough one. If you're running a business, there's really two options. You either get your own GPUs on site and you have your own hardware infrastructure, or you try to have some private instance, like, an Azure private instance. That's what I'm seeing a lot of businesses do, where the models are not training on your data. They're staying inside your own instance, not leaving. And that's what a lot of people I'm seeing opt towards. Question is that secure enough? And it really just depends business to business. I know there was a healthcare company I was working with, and there really just wasn't a way to bulletproof the security enough to where they felt comfortable putting all this data in there. And so therefore their project is just on hold right now. So I think it depends on the level of security, but that's a huge thing that I'm seeing as these businesses are becoming more and more, or wanting to become more and more AI forward. They're still hesitant because their data is like their gold, and they see how valuable data is and going to become. And I mean, if you give up that proprietary data, that could be worth millions and millions of dollars in the future in one way or another. So security alongside compute, I think, is something that still needs to be solved and worked on and improved.
Yeah, it becomes your moat. We talked on, I guess it was yesterday, to Jonah Lupton, big trader, big guy on X, and he's very bullish on Reddit. He's like, they are doing these deals with these different, big AI labs, because I think it's just so. I mean, they obviously like threatened to sue or did sue.
Yeah.
And it I think is an easy court case for them, because it's like, we built this community, all these like, users are very clearly our users that are, putting these comments on our platform. That data is ours. We built it. We invested in it. Like, that's our asset, business asset. And so you can't train on that. And if you do, like, we're going to sue you for, your $800 billion IPO. So at Reddit, he sees as like a huge stock that can benefit from, these payments. I think on the smaller scale, small businesses might not have people coming to pay for their data, but it is a moat against other companies that are spinning up. Is like, oh, you have historical data from your customer, your business, your job, your products you develop. That's going to.
There's no way like what you could turn that into in the future. Right now we're talking about chatbots and agents, but what if? I mean, I'm just literally making this up. But what if there's a way that you can input all the data you have and it spits out your own proprietary model, right? Like, I mean, who knows in the future how that data is going to be used, but we do know the data is incredibly powerful. What's interesting is I hear a lot of people talking about how bullish they are about Reddit, but I don't hear them say the same things about Meta. And I don't really hear the same things about Grok either. As a matter of fact, I just hear people trashing Grok left and right. But I mean, these companies have a ton of data that they have as their, in Grok in particular, XAI, they might even be able to tap into Tesla data at some point. So who knows? But to me, I mean, if you think about the total market of X and then Meta, I mean, versus Reddit, I mean, those seem equally competitive. But you never really hear people talking about that like they are Reddit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Meta has proven they know how to use data better than almost anyone in the entire world. I mean, Google's obviously, I think, still the king of that, but a crazy amount of just of being it. I think playing in the major leagues for 10, 15 years is like they've had scale for so long on so much. It'll be wild, and that's why it makes you very curious around why they've tripped over themselves, the whole metaverse thing. Like, why were they not investing in AI that uses data more? Maybe they just didn't see like the products coming through.
Well, I heard a crazy story. Dennis, I forget his last name, the founder of DeepMind that Google acquired, that basically started this whole thing really in general. And so it was around 2015 or 16, he went and had dinner at Mark Zuckerberg's house. And he had DeepMind. He saw that, he knew what we're experiencing today was coming. He just knew it. And he talked to Mark about a couple of things. And he said Mark was equally excited about the metaverse as he was AI, as he was this, as he was that. And to him, that showed him that Mark didn't really have his finger on where the world was actually going. But when he talked to Google's founders, or Google's CEO at the time, I think it was Sundar, I'm not exactly sure, it was very clear that it's AI, that's the future. And so that's why DeepMind ended up going to Google, which has obviously, been huge for them with Gemini and everything they've done. Yeah. And I just thought that was really interesting, not a knock on Zuckerberg, but how Dennis was basically like, he doesn't seem focused enough on AI, so I'm going to go somewhere else. And apparently that night he texted the CEO and said, hey, let's continue this conversation after he left Mark's house. So to your point, I think their attention's just been kind of fragmented and scattered and just too far over the place.
Yeah, especially if he's someone that building DeepMind, you don't want to, he knows that he's going to be like make money regardless. And
exactly.
So it's about seeing his vision through. He doesn't want to be a department of Meta, that's just kind of working on things. They get repurposed for another project. What is for you? And I think we don't always have to have two, but we'll do two today. I think every show we're gonna have the structure. You guys, we're gonna help you out with some AI tool of the week. Biggest takeaway. I can go first and let you think about it if you want.
Sure.
So mine is, we might have talked about this before, but using Claude Cowork, have it connected MCP connection to Notion. I actually have been using a lot more ChatGPT 5.4. I need to experiment with Openagents, using open source features. Honestly, love to. Been very busy though, like on a coding project, so it's been very Codex focused. What this tool is, I think it applies to really anyone. I think it's a really good way to do it. Using Cowork, connected to Notion, go in and create a Cowork project, start planning a trip. So you're planning your trip this way, and you say, hey, here's where I want to go. We're going to the Bitcoin Prague conference in June. And so we're going to stop first in England, then go to Belgium, then go to Luxembourg, then go to Munich, Germany, and then go to Prague. So nice little flow. It's all tied together, but there's a lot of different moving parts there, trains, lodging, 4 different places. So there's a lot of really good information of, like last night I was asking, should I do 4 stays or 5 stays? Should I stay in Luxembourg? And it just gives really good personal information. It's like, oh, you have a 3-year-old that's in a train. He's going to love, this train from here to this, Belgium to Luxembourg. It's like 3 hours. And it's like perfect. Just wake up early, do a day trip and come back. So a lot of decision-making is guided so well that saves a ton of time. I've done a lot of research for like international trips, and it's so hard. You have to validate so many times that what you're looking at is correct, trains and schedules. And, I went to Stockholm, and the entire island system is shut down, during not, I think it was November. So you couldn't even go out to these cool summer islands in Stockholm. So if you plan on that as your trip, you really need to look at the ferry schedule. So the tip itself, connect Notion, plan your trip, tell it to build a Notion page. The reason you use Notion for this is that you can easily share it with other users without them having to be a paid user. So my mother, my wife, they both have access to this really cool plan shared doc. Then every day when you do plan something, you can just start with Cowork, add in the new detail. I screenshot all the Airbnb details. I drop them in there and I say, hey, here's my 3-4 Airbnb bookings added in there. It automatically started doing a budget of like, here's what your trip's costing. And then identifying the gaps of like, look, you want to go to this castle in Southern Germany. It gets pretty busy in June. So go ahead and like, let's focus on booking that. Absolutely game-changing way to plan a trip. I've honestly like, it's like one of the AI use cases where I'm like, this is more impactful than many things I've done on OpenClaw.
I feel like it's come so far. I remember when ChatGPT first got web search, and basically I was trying to do something similar and it just was not working, right? But it just shows how fast these models change, how much they improve. 5.4 is really, really, really good, by the way, with ChatGPT. So yeah, that's a great tip. I basically add to that. My tip for today is along the same lines is I think people are seriously underutilizing scheduled tasks, specifically in a tool like Cowork. For example, I was talking to my buddy and he was like, because a lot of my friends will just ask me, how could I use AI for this situation, right? And so he has several calls every single day. He's got to basically update a spreadsheet based on the information he gets on those calls. And so what I told him is, what you should do is just set a scheduled task. You can have it run multiple times a day, once a day, at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, whatever you prefer. And you basically just tell it what you just told me. Hey, I have calls. So for me, I use Granola to record all my calls. Incredible tool. And, use whatever tool you have Cowork, grab the transcript from that call, have it be connected to the spreadsheet that you have to update after these calls. And it will run however often you want it to run. And it will say, okay, let's say it's running at the end of the day. You had 3 calls, pulls that information, updates your spreadsheet. The next morning you go into the spreadsheet and it's fully updated for you. And so I think that using scheduled tasks for kind of repetitive work that doesn't require a lot of brain power, it's more so let me take this and put it here. That is a really, really great way to use these tools. And I just feel like they're super underutilized. I don't really see people talking about them that much, and I abuse them. The scheduled aspect is really, really nice. So if you find yourself doing repetitive tasks, think about scheduling it and freeing up some time for yourself.
Yeah, smart. Sam, what are you going to leave us with? Anything else from this week you want to have?
Oh, man. Well, I've been frustrated this morning because Claude was down. And so it's not to go on a rant, but I was like, how did we even work before AI existed? It's almost even hard to believe. So I think that my message is my message to myself. And that's make sure you're still using your brain every single day because you don't want to lose that muscle. It's easy to. And then these tools get stripped from you and you're like, you feel vulnerable almost.
Yeah. Yeah. Things like today, it's like you need to diversify. I think some things are at the forefront. If you're looking at open source models, talk about, Christopher from Openagents. Not everyone's ready to try everything too early and is going to want to get in the command line to try new tools, but start looking at diversifying, even if it's, having a family like Claude code account, or a Claude account, but then maybe you're using like ChatGPT Codex, for main work or vice versa. Having diversification, like if you do build some of these processes for your business, because a lot of people are small businesses are just like looking for help. But if your help is gone, then you're kind of stuck in a position of like, oh, what was the manual process I was doing before, and the muscles, not there. It's not worked out. One thing we'll pull up, my co-host Rob and I on the Friday Stack. Talking about this market this morning, so we're going to bring it up for our friends at Predicts. Will Bitcoin crash during the Bitcoin conference? 24%. So it's going down. Market looks closed, so they might spin up another one. The big thing I'm seeing here is just that market's picking up. We're seeing a lot of things pick up across the board. I think people are less concerned about AI bubble and more so that some of these shortages are going to remain shortages for a long time, that demand's going to continue, that even from last show, I think last week, even the Google algorithm change that's going to provide more efficient use of memory, they came out this week and said it might actually lead to more memory usage. So more Micron, DRAM, NAND, different types of memory that is going to be used for all these models. A really neat fact was that Anthropic, Opus 4.6, is a massive consumer of memory compared to other models. And that is one of the driving factors of why people have such a good experience, is because it's using so much, DRAM and using these so much memory per like API call, tool call to make sure that it's looking at so much context when it's giving you that answer. Incredibly bullish. I'm bullish on the ETF DRAM, which came out, which has like a mix of Micron, SK Hynix, Samsung, others. Not financial advice, but for those that are like looking to play into the broader market, and Anthropic and OpenAI or haven't IPO'd, I think it's smarter to look at some of these other companies.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. We'll be signing off. We'll be back next week, 1:30 Eastern. Sam Knight's been phenomenal add to the show, and we'll be bringing you more AI tips.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
See ya.